Shalom, shalom. We're back. This is part 3 of Zionism, so let me just jump right back in to where we were and continue on with what I was reading. I do not oppose the modern state of Israel per se. I just don't agree with the modern state of Israel on account that it is a non-religious, secular government and not a Torah-based government ruled by Messiah. Even Yochanan the Revelator seen a secular or occupied Jerusalem as Sodom in Egypt, according to Revelation 9:8. This does not change my love for the land itself and my desire to go there and to daven at the Western Wall and to walk the same places my Messiah walked, but I do not view the modern state of Israel as legitimate per se. Let me just end with this. The modern state of Israel is like the war in Iraq. I may disagree with the war, but I support the troops. In other words, I may disagree with the state and the government of Israel, but I support the Jews who have decided to live there. So I also want to bring out the point that Yeshua the Messiah himself was not a Zionist, because the zealots of Yeshua's time could be seen as Zionists of their day because they wanted to overthrow the Roman occupation and have a modern state of Israel during that time. And of course, this is what got Judas into trouble, and he ended up betraying the Messiah because of it, because he was disillusioned. He thought that, this was the Messiah, and hey, the Messiah is going to come, he's going to overthrow Rome. And when he saw that the Messiah wasn't going to do that, when he heard the Messiah say the words, you know what, I'm going to destroy this temple and rebuild it in 3 days, referring to himself, when he said things such as, my kingdom is not of this world, Judas got disillusioned. He said, wow, he's not the Messiah that I thought he was going to be. He's not going to overthrow this Roman occupation. So he ended up betraying Messiah for money. So Yeshua was not a Zionist because he said, you know what, my kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom is of the world to come. When I return a second time, I'm going to establish the promised land. I'm going to establish the true Israel. I'm going to rebuild the temple, or going to come back to the temple that's already been rebuilt, depending on how you look at prophecy. So, in a sense, you could even say that Yeshua himself was not a Zionist. So if Messiah himself was not a Zionist, I'm not a Zionist. Like I said, I may disagree with the modern state of Israel and its policies and government, but I do not. I'm not anti-Israel. I do support the Jewish people. I do support the Jews who have decided to make Aliyah and immigrate back to the land of Israel, back to what we call the modern state of Israel. And I see the modern state of Israel as a staging grounds, as a platform, as a stepping stool to the ultimate fulfillment of prophecy. There is, it was prophesied that Israel was going to be recognized again as a state, and as such, we see this come to pass. So this is a perfect staging ground for the Messiah to return to a place called Israel, to a state called Israel, and reestablish the real Israel, to reestablish the real and legitimate promised land in all its fulfillment and all its entirety. Please don't misunderstand me. Please don't get me wrong. I will say that I'm an anti-Zionist, and like I said, there's different degrees of Zionism, to the point where they're almost like Hamas and the Taliban, where they're terroristic. Then there's Zionists who are Zionists nominally and name only, where they're like, yeah, I agree with the state. I'm glad that there's a state of Israel. I may be labeled as one of those. There may be some ultra-Orthodox Jews who may not see me as anti-Zionist. They say, "Oh, you're a Zionist, and because you don't oppose, you agree with the Jews who live in Israel or whatever." I don't know. So some people may label me a Zionist, and some people may label me an anti-Zionist. I personally see myself as an anti-Zionist, but I don't see that as a nasty or bad thing. Like I said. I may disagree with the modern state of Israel's government and fiscal policies, but I'm glad Israel exists as a state because it is a fulfillment of prophecy. It is a staging ground. But sometimes I can see that Zionism takes precedence over Torah, over not only Torah, but over Messiah and over Judaism itself, because those who are in charge of Israel right now, for the most part, are non-practicing, non-Torah observant ethnic Jews. So when Messiah returns, he will gather his people back to the land, and we will occupy the entire land of promise. So I hope these 3 videos about Zionism has been educational to help you see why some Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox Jews are against the state of Israel, how they view that. You know, they see that Israel is being a rebellious child who's not accepting their punishment of exile and are trying to redeem themselves and remedy the situation themselves. And instead of accepting exile, they're trying to push God's hand, and they see this as against Torah and against God and disrespectful. They see it as them trying to redeem themselves. Now, ultra-Orthodox and Orthodox Jews do not disagree with Jews living in the land of Israel or the modern state of Israel. It's just that they don't care what it's called. It doesn't have to be called Israel. They know it's theirs anyway. They know that when Messiah returns, it's going to be theirs anyway. But they see that the establishment of the state of Israel has caused a bigger rift a bigger rift than one that existed before Israel had become a state, where even though there were skirmishes and scuffles and still prejudice and racism against Arabs and Jews, for the most part, before the state of Israel, Jews lived together in relative peace. But after the Jewish state was established, the Arabs were encouraged to return to their indigenous homelands of origin, and they were not allowed to be assimilated back into those nations. Their homelands rejected them, so they had to return to the land of Israel and live there as refugees, so to speak. So I'm not going to pick sides and say who's right or who's wrong. I think that there are faults on the side of Israel, and I think there's the fault on the side of the so-called Palestinians, on the Arabs who live in Israel and claim that it's their land. I think there's faults and wrongs on both sides. So I hope I'm clear about that. Like I said, let me just read my last paragraph once again. I do not oppose the modern state of Israel per se. I just do not agree with the modern state of Israel on account of that it's a non-religious, secular government and not a Torah-based government ruled by Messiah. Even Yochanan, the Revelator, seen a secular and or occupied Jerusalem as Sodom and Egypt, according to Revelation 9:8. This does not change my love. This does not change my love for the land itself and my desire to go there and daven at the Western Wall and to walk the same places my Messiah walked. But I do not view the modern state of Israel as so-called legitimate. Let me just end with this. The modern state of Israel is like the current war in Iraq and Afghanistan. I may disagree with the war, but I support the troops. In other words, I may disagree with the state and the government of Israel, but I support the Jews who have decided to live there. And also to recap what I have said previously, that Yeshua himself was not a Zionist because he did not overthrow the Roman government when he first came to earth. And he said, I'm going to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. And they thought it was a literal temple, and they thought, wow, blasphemy. But Yeshua was talking about his body. He also said, my kingdom is not of this world. In other words, he's saying, my kingdom is of the world to come. It's of the new heaven, of the new earth, of the new Jerusalem, of when I return for a second time, when I'm going to reestablish the real, legitimate Israel, and they will occupy the entire borders of the land of promise given to Abraham and Moses, not this tiny swath of land only the size of Rhode Island. So anyway, this is the part 3 of Zionism. Please watch my other videos, Zionism and Zionism Part 2. And Shalom and Shavuot Tov. Bye-bye.